what I found in 4 days at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. This is an intense introduction. Patriotic, grueling, exciting, non-stop, and rewarding is a trip to our nation's capital at the National Mall. The historic and photo-perfect city perched on the Potomac River is plastered with history and historic structures. The National Mall roughly extends from the Lincoln Memorial to the Capitol, but I promise there's so much more to experience. From incredible statues and memorials to not-to-be-missed, lesser-known places. Let me show you what all we accomplished in 4 faster-than-light days at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. This is the Get Your Feet Wet video to introduce you to the sights and sounds of this splendid and gotta-go-to place. From the Tidal Basin to the Library of Congress, and from Polish dogs to a 5-star dinner, and from tears to smiles. The city will put you on an emotional and sensory roller coaster as you travel across America with me. With insider tips, I want this to be a personal guide to those planning a trip to the National Mall in Washington, D.C., and an informative presentation to my armchair travelers, truckers listening on the nation's highways, and rewarding to history buffs across the United States and beyond. Preparation is not to be an underestimated factor in touring the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Most places require advanced time tickets be obtained online to enter. However, most are free. These entrance features help to manage the crowds, which ultimately makes each person's visit better. I will provide our experience with this procedure and how it worked, how it didn't work because of failure on my part, and the workarounds to these issues. When you visit grand places, don't fret that you can't get to everything. Be glad for what you did see. And like me, you will want to return to peel more of that onion at a future date. The weather doesn't always care that you are there, as you will see. In this video, I want to share all the places that we saw, and I will be breaking down in more detail what we saw each day in subsequent videos, so that you can glean the most from this visitor's guide to our great capital. This city is geographically poised between the states of Maryland and Virginia, and either of these states make a great base camp. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe so you will know when I post these new videos. The major sites that we accomplished to visit were along the National Mall or within walking distance. We not only walked way too much, but we did use the train to help our overworked legs as time moved on. On day 1, we picked up our son at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, and then headed to a parking garage as close to the Washington Monument as possible. Our plan was to see the sights between the Washington Monument and circle around the Tidal Basin, then to return to our vehicle, making a giant backward C-shaped trek, while lessening the steps to make the most of the time. The highlights of day 1 included walking to and around the Washington Monument. Tickets should be reserved in advance. Then we walked completely around the White House, starting at the Ellipse to Lafayette Park. Your head will be on a swivel, simply because you can't walk a block without seeing something of extreme interest. Signage on every corner and paths clearly identify the sites in each direction. We popped into the Do Not Consider Missing White House Visitor Center. We walked around to the front of the White House and to Lafayette Park, then crossed the street to St. John's Church, known as the Church of the Presidents. By this time, a Polish dog would satisfy our growling bellies, but we had to keep moving. The World War II Memorial is huge, and frankly, no words can describe the emotion I felt there. Remember, this is just an introduction video. I will be breaking down each day in great detail to give you an insider's tour of these places. But then there was the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, and probably one of the most famous of all places at the National Mall in Washington, D.C., the Lincoln Memorial. The path around the Tidal Basin is exceedingly rewarding, as many intriguing statues and memorials pave the way to the absolutely gorgeous Jefferson Memorial. On the pathway there, we saw the unique Korean War Veterans Memorial, the Park Police Horse Stables, the District of Columbia War Memorial, the passionate Martin Luther King Memorial, and unbelievably, the first cherry trees from Japan given to the United States. That's an interesting tale for sure. We backtracked a bit to go along the western side of the Tidal Basin, where we found the Franklin Delano Roosevelt Memorial. Simply wonderful. There is a visitor center gift shop there. Be sure to get all your National Park Passport book stamps at every location, because not every location has every stamp. I learned this the hard way. I will be sharing my little cheat tip to help gather these date stamps in the best way that I found. We sidestepped over to see the forgotten Founding Father statue. Yes, George Mason. We have been to his home just to the south in Virginia, and I plan to do a video sharing our visit there. Now, as the day was drawing to a close, we were pleasantly surprised to see the Jefferson Memorial wasn't very crowded, unlike the Lincoln Memorial. The Jefferson Memorial is in a more distant location from the National Mall. That was day 1. Now on day 2, we entered the city via rail, by far the best option in my opinion. This day was a little more structured because we had time-sensitive tickets for 3 places and dinner reservations at 5. Again, and the full details of this phenomenal day are forthcoming. But here's a peek into the sights of this day as it unfolded. The impressive Dwight Eisenhower Memorial was on our path to reach the Library of Congress, where we had passes to enter at 10 a.m. Many museums and places on the National Mall do not open until 10 a.m., and most places request that you be there 10 minutes ahead of your timed entry and prepare for TSA or harsher screening to enter most buildings. Take minimal items with you, and I will tell you more about what can and cannot be taken into most government buildings. Having planned a few extra minutes, we passed the Ulysses S. Grant statue that is placed at a reflection pond and at the west end of the Capitol grounds. We passed the United States Supreme Court, which is undergoing some sort of renovation or cleaning. Then we made our way to the line for the Library of Congress entrance. More details and the truly amazing items we saw will be shown in my upcoming National Mall Day 2 video. Remember, this is an introductory video. I'm only scratching the surface in this video, but I know you are enthralled by what you've seen so far. We had time tickets for the Smithsonian Institution Air and Space Museum for noon. We were first in line and had to gobble down a scone and iced latte before entering. This place is overflowing with historical items that track mankind's commitment to flight. Wait until you see inside this museum. With no time to eat lunch, we long-legged it a few blocks north across the National Mall to the National Archives, where we had 2 p.m. time tickets. With 15 or 20 minutes to spare, I say that tongue-in-cheek, we walked into the Smithsonian Institution National Museum of Natural History. In this filled-to-the-brim museum, the thing I wanted to see was the Hope Diamond. Now it was 10 till 2. We walked right in with no delay at the National Archives. To say the National Archives was a heartstopper is an understatement. Although the main room was very crowded, we were able to see this nation's most valued original documents. Breathe. There have been a few times in my life that I call I can't breathe moments, and I have to say there were several on this 4-day trip to our nation's capital. We were on hyperdrive, to say the least. Honestly, I think most people will want to take these 4 days that I'm presenting in this series and make it one full week. The weather was starting to poop out on us, and we had too much to do before dinner at 5, so we gobbled a protein bar and called it good. Next major stop was the old post office. I had learned this was a lesser-known place to see great views of the city at the National Park operated observation deck. With plenty of historical information and a fun glass elevator ride, this is a must-do. The weather was not going to cooperate, but we went anyway. By the way, we did go back. No reservations and no fee to this historic site in the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. We had time tickets for the Washington Monument. I'll tell you how we got those in the Day 2 video. On the way there, with just 5 minutes to spare, in the wind-driven rain, we entered the American History Museum to see the original Star-Spangled Banner. You know the Francis Scott Key Star-Spangled Banner? Can't breathe moment. I get kind of emotional just talking about it now. No photos are allowed. So this one you will have to see for yourself. We visited Fort McHenry in Baltimore at a different time, which was outstanding. You'll want to go to Fort McHenry when you're in the region. Then, in what seemed to be a tropical storm, and my umbrella not any happier than I was because we had dinner reservations at a fancy restaurant, and now I'm drenched and my ugly shoes and socks were soaked. We trudged uphill to the Washington Monument. There were only 10 of us in line. I figured all the others decided it wasn't worth it. Well, yes, the views would be junk, but the fact of riding in the elevator of the Washington Monument and reading all the information signage at the observation deck was certainly well worth it. Why would we miss this opportunity? Drenched, but only a few blocks away from Old Ebbitt Grill, we braved the path to enter the restaurant. At 4:59 on the dot. A minute to spare. We had an amazing dinner. This is a popular place for the Washington crowd, and we looked all around but didn't recognize anyone famous. While having dinner, the weather let up for a bit, and so afterwards we walked north and west to go to Lafayette Park to see the White House again. Because we were so far from L'Enfant Plaza Station, we headed northward more to Farragut West Station to return to home base. Day 3 was a bit different, but we did take the train once again. The weather was gloomy, but no precipitation. Once at L'Enfant Plaza Station, we took the rail to the Pentagon, where we walked practically halfway around the building to get to the Pentagon Memorial. Then we returned to the train to get to Arlington National Cemetery. I have already posted a full video on Arlington National Cemetery. Please see the link in the description below. Watching the changing of the guard at the tomb of the unknown soldier is life-changing. Riding the train back to L'Enfant Plaza, we walked to see the free displays at the Museum of the Bible. Back to the station to ride another train to get to Ford's Theater. The theater was not open at that time, which when you see the full videos, you will learn how this happened to us more than one time. We went ahead and toured the phenomenal museum, seeing the Derringer used to assassinate President Lincoln. The Peterson House and aftermath exhibits will take around an hour to see and are found across the street. You will stand in the room where our 16th president drew his last breath. And the tower of books there on display is worth going there just in itself. Day 4 was met with bold, beautiful sunshine. We had to circle back a place or two, then ride another train to get to Ford's Theater as soon as it opened. You can actually get up to the special seating box where Abraham Lincoln was shot. Since it was a beautiful day, we returned to the old post office to capture great views of the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Afterwards, we hopped a train to see the historic Smithsonian Institution Castle, as it is known. The castle is currently undergoing renovation, the first in over 50 years. I needed to get a few more gorgeous photos and part passport stamps that I had missed. This was going to be a wrap-up day, but ended up being one of the most moving and unforgettable. A big surprise was to unfold. We had tried to obtain reservations to get into the U.S. Capitol, but they were sold out for weeks. There isn't a fee, but I guess I should say there weren't any time tickets available. We stood in line to get into the U.S. Capitol because I knew we could at least get to the gift shop of the Visitor Center. After the screening of all screenings, we entered Emancipation Hall. The greeter asked if we had reservations. I said no. He asked if we wanted to take the Capitol tour. Of course we do. He told us to go to the desk at the bottom of the stairs and see if we could be a walk-on. We looked at the guy at the counter and said, "Can we get on a tour?" To which he asked if we wanted to get on the tour that started in 10 minutes. What do you think I said? I can't wait to share with you what all we saw on this Capitol tour. I have to admit, I wept several times as I was so moved by this experience. I will explain more in my Day 4 video. Next stop was to go inside the U.S. Supreme Court. We had tried this before, found out what it took to get in, and now we were back because we knew what we were doing. There's a lot of learning curve to go on, and that's why I'm trying to make this video to help your visit easier and better and smoother. What a beautiful structure. Visitors can see the actual Supreme Court courtroom. And if you would like, you can stand in line to get on a tour to go inside the courtroom. The thing that overwhelmed me was its small size. This ginormous structure, and at the heart of it, such a small room where so many historic and life-changing decisions have been made. It was time to call it a day. It was time to call it a week. I couldn't help but snap some terrific photos of the U.S. Capitol. Did I mention I broke my sunglasses? Back to L'Enfant Plaza Station to get to home base. I hope this video has given you an inside glimpse in what can be accomplished in a short period of time at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Remember to subscribe and turn on the notifications so that you will be alerted when I post the detailed videos with tons of pictures, ideas, and tips of making the most of your visit to the National Mall in Washington, D.C. or simply getting a grander impression of all the history and fun wrapped into this terrific place. Flip-flops and ugly shoes on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Wait till you hear about my flip-flops on day 1. Unclassic road trip. Be sure to watch my Urban Attractions playlist to see more great videos, and you won't want to miss watching my video on Arlington National Cemetery. Please share my Unclassic road trip channel with a friend. Did I tell you that I appreciate your comments? Well, I do.